living with mental illness as well as their family. We have a lot of core values. We believe in the possibility of recovery and wellness, inclusion, empowerment, and fairness. And we also believe that mental illness is just that. It is an illness. It is not a moral failure or a character flaw or a weakness, as sometimes it has been portrayed as, or sometimes it's treated as. So who we are. NAMI Maryland is the official state organization in Maryland, and we just, again, seek to improve the lives of people living with mental illness and their families. There's a small staff, but NAMI Maryland has many volunteers, including me. I am a volunteer for NAMI Maryland. So who am I? I am a mother of a child diagnosed with a serious mental illness. We at NAMI Maryland, we're actually featured on NAMI Maryland's podcast called You, Me, and My Mental Illness. I'm an advocate for universal mental health care and support as a member of NAMI.org. And I also facilitate support groups for family members of those living with a mental illness. I have 2 different support groups, one in Baltimore County and one in Anne Arundel County. And also, last but not least, I was with the federal government. I was with the Department of Health and Human Services for almost 10 years. And then I was RIFed. I was RIFed back in April. And it was extremely hard for me because growing up, I grew up in PG County, and growing up there, my parents and all my family had federal jobs, and they told me that get a federal job. This is the most secure job you will ever have. So being laid off from the federal government was never in my realm of possibilities. For the past 10 years, I've had this job, but unexpected things happen. So when I learned about the possibility, me and my coworkers learned about the possibility of us getting RIFed, some of us, our mental health really tanked. We were willing to stress. We were worried, anxiety and fear. We didn't know where we were going to go. So how can we maintain our mental health when we are unemployed or in between jobs? We're on a job hunt. This can be extremely demoralizing and frustrating. And I'm going to give you a quick disclaimer. I am going to give you some tips, but I am not a therapist, and this is not medical advice. So really quick, I'm going to go over some basic statistics. I just want to let you know that mental illness is not as rare as people think. It's actually prevalent. In the United States, 1 in 5 adults experience a mental illness every year. 1 in 20 experience a serious mental illness. A serious meaning that it interferes with your daily life, your job, your relationships, and even your hygiene. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among 10 and 34. So this is our youth. This is our young adults. And suicide is the 10th leading cause in death in the United States, period. So anxiety disorders, depression, post-traumatic stress, these are among the common. And these could first start and initiate after a stressful event like losing your job, or a stressful event like losing your job could exacerbate them. So I'm just going to go over some just some studies real quick. An NIH study shows that unemployment has significant effect on mental disorders, anxiety disorders, and even depressive disorders. Losing your job is called a significant life event for a reason, because not having a job impacts your life in so many aspects. So unemployment is a significant source of stress. It causes the loss of identity. It causes the loss of social relationships and financial security. And unemployed individuals often engage in unhealthy behaviors and lifestyles. So maladaptive coping skills like excessive drinking, substance use, spending, gambling, excessive drinking, disassociation, I'm going to play video games all day. They come into play, and all of this makes sense, right? Because when we're stressed, we want short-term comfort over long-term impact. So to override that need for short-term comfort, that takes practice and skills. And unemployment can put you in survival mode, right? And when we're in survival mode, empathy is harder, self-care is harder, rest is harder, and implementing positive coping skills is so much harder. All right, next slide. So we're going to go over some definitions really quick. So grief, when we lose our job or anything major that happens in our life where a loss is involved, we are going through grief. Grief is the process characterized by intense emotions like sadness, anger, confusion, and many of us, including myself, we are grieving our job loss. And grief is like an ocean, it's just not linear. It comes in waves. Sometimes the water is calm, and sometimes the water is overwhelming, and sometimes all we can do is just swim. So trauma is a one in a time event. It could be a one-time event, or it could be a series of events, and it often leaves a negative impact on a person's mental, physical health, and emotional well-being. I typically say trauma is not what happens to you, but is what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. One of my favorite authors came up with that, but it is true. And that's the reason why two different people can go through the exact same thing, and one person will come out traumatized and the other person would not. So it's really your interpretation of the event that can be traumatic. And job loss can be traumatic, especially if the job was a part of your identity, like a serious part of your identity. So when we talk about mental health, I'm going to apply the World Health Organization's definition to health to mental health, and that is the ability of the body to adapt to new threats and infirmities. So it's not the absence of disease. So ideal mental health is not the absence of stress, hardships. It's our ability to build our capacity to handle what life throws at us. So your mental health reflects how you feel, how you think, how you function in life, especially during the hard times. So optimal mental health isn't about avoiding challenges or discomforts. It's your ability to handle life. So if your ability to handle life is conditioned on things being easy and predictable, then your mental health needs some capacity building. So when I say that, I just mean resilience. And that is the process of just adapting through the face of adversity. We also talk about post-traumatic growth, which is the positive psychological changes experienced as a result of a traumatic or highly challenging circumstances. So it's not necessarily the event itself, but it's the cognitive process afterwards for how we grow. So for example, it's a mental shift. When it comes to my daughter's illness and other life changes, like losing my job, I used to ask myself, why me? Like, God, why me? And now I'm saying, well, why not me? Why did I think I would be able to get through this life completely untouched? So all of this goes into mindsets. And from a job perspective, many skills can't be taught, but you know what can't be taught? A mindset, like work ethic, integrity, the drive to succeed. All this plays a huge role while you're interviewing for a job and looking for a job. And your mental health is your mindset. So resilience is building your distress tolerance, which refers to your ability to cope in uncomfortable situations. So over time, my grief for my job loss hasn't gotten smaller, but I've just gotten stronger because I've been practicing my distress tolerance skills. So next slide. So I'm going to give you a few coping strategies. And one that I really live by is that life isn't fair. I have unfortunately come to learn that between having a child with serious mental illness, and then she's been hospitalized 10 times. She's been suicidal. She's had a lot of run-ins. I say about 4 run-ins with the police. Between all that and then my job loss, because her hospitalizations cost a lot of money, and then I also lost insurance with that, life isn't fair, and it will never be. Some of us are born into wealth, some of us are born into poverty. And after I got laid off, I called my mom and I said, where is my trust fund? Right. So I got mad when I found out I have a trust fund. So additionally, I've learned that hard work and discipline doesn't necessarily get reward, but accepting that and then kind of just, pivoting is called adaptability. Playing with the cards that that you are given. I usually tell people, because I play spades a lot, I'm like, you could win with a bad hand, just like you could win with a great hand. You can lose with a bad hand. You can also lose with a great hand. So just dealing with the cards that you were given. So develop self-awareness, understanding your strengths, weaknesses, and triggers. That's really important. Building positive coping mechanisms. And I really, really, really want to talk about self-care, such as exercise, meditation. You have to demand a way to unplug, disconnect yourself, and replenish yourself. I tell people that self-care is not a luxury. It is a necessity. So for me, for an example, I was job hunting for a few days. I put in all of the applications, and I literally got 8 rejection notifications in a row on the same day. And it was pretty demoralizing. So I was just like, well, let me take a step back. Let me just kind of grieve over this, kind of process it, and I'll get back into the job market maybe within a week. So I like to use the bank account analogy, which is, life will withdraw from us, right? Bank accounts have withdrawals and deposits, and life will withdraw from us, but we need to do something that gives us deposits, or else we'll just overdraft, and overdrafting isn't great. And it's okay if all you do is hold on for that one day. It's okay. Practice gratitude, focus on the positive aspects of your life. I did that. One of the positive aspects is, I'm not homeless because I have a husband who has a great job. So I'm not used to a man taking care of me, but I had to eat some humble pie and say, my husband loves me and this is what we're going to do. Develop problem-solving skills to navigate challenges. I'm really going to highlight surround yourself with supportive people and individuals, and even seek professional help if you need it. Do not be ashamed. I do not believe that healing and growth and recovery could happen in a solo environment. I do think that and this is one of the reasons why I'm thriving. Confidence, believe in your ability to overcome adversity. My friend says success has memory, right? There have been times in your life, in all of our lives, in which we have been successful. So please remember that. Review setbacks as opportunities for growth. Again, this is the mindset of resilience. Now I start to say, what has that moment taught me? Because I'm trying to put my mindset in the post-traumatic growth mindset. Practice self-compassion. I always say, and treat yourself with kindness. A lot of us, if I ask you right now, do you have a kind inner voice? I know I'm going to get a lot of people that said, no, or not as kind as it should be. So I try to say people, with self-awareness comes self-compassion. We're always growing. We're always growing. Let's just learn from our lessons. And then embrace humor. I love this one. It's one of NAMI's principles, and I make jokes all the time to keep myself from crying. So, for example, we had to fly to Florida for my nephew's wedding, and my daughter's like, oh, what seats are we on? I'm like, honey, I do not have a job. We are in last class. We are in the very back of the plane. And then right now, as we are trying to figure out Christmas, I had to text my family. I said, look here, I'm on the struggle bus. I do not have a job. Please keep that in mind. Please send out gift options for people on the struggle bus. So yeah, and that's joy. Being on the struggle bus has become a joke in my family. So embrace humor, because without laughing, all you're doing is crying. And then just remember that resilience is a journey. It's a direction. It's not a destination. It's a direction. We can always keep going, and it takes time to develop all of these skills, but it's possible. It's possible to cultivate them and increase your capacity. Next slide. So I learned this. I have a couple of certifications, and one is in trauma support and crisis intervention. And so I've learned it through this. So there's something called the locus of control, and the term refers to how much of control a person feels like they have in their own behavior. A person can have either an internal or external locus of control, or fall somewhere in the middle. It's pretty good to fall somewhere in the middle. middle. And external locus control means that we blame external forces for our circumstances, while an internal locus of control means we believe that we have control and ownership over our circumstances. And again, it's good to have a balance, because too much external you give up because you feel like you have no control. But too much internal meaning is that you're placing too much energy on things that you can't control, and you're deeming yourself a failure based on things that you can't control. So the point of understanding this is to try to sit down and understand where to place your energy. So everyone has external challenges, but placing a healthy amount of energy on what we can control is good for our mental health. So I'm gonna give you an example. You can study for an interview all you want, but you can't control what questions they're going to ask in the interview. So focus on the output, not the outcome, because we're going to have many interviews that we may not get a job for, and our application may not even get through, but preparing is still always good. And I like to practice the both and thinking. So instead of saying, is it me or the situation, I start to say, and again, I've practiced this, what part is me and what part is the situation. And except what's outside of your control, I've had to acknowledge that luck, timing, and other people's choices and systematic factors all have a play. So example, I could prepare the best resume, but whether the company has the budget to hire you it's just not up to me. And then also I have to be aware that, like, I'm out here job seeking, a lot of others are, and they're very qualified, just like me. I'm not the only qualified person walking around here, especially in the state of Maryland. Next slide. So I'm going to go over a little bit more specific coping skills. So be honest with how you feel and name your emotions. So this is called emotional granularity, and we typically say name it to tame it. The more accurately you can name your emotions, how you're feeling, the better you can control it. And that's a biological fact, because you go from you're feeling your emotions in the amygdala to thinking about them, and that's in the prefrontal cortex. So your brain will shift from the emotional brain essentially to the rationale brain. So you're able to control it a little bit better. Practice mindfulness, be in touch with your feelings and the reason for your behavior. I typically tell people, acknowledge your feelings without acting on it. And again, this takes practice. And I also say, don't judge your feelings. They're your feelings for a reason. Try to understand where they're coming from. If you're feeling scared, if you're feeling nervous, try to understand what you're coming from, but don't necessarily judge them. Judge your actions, but understand your feelings. Anger and resentment. Many of us have anger and resentment, especially if you got laid off in a chaotic way like I did. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not here to tell you that you should get rid of anger. I know that that's a process that people have to go through, but the first step is just saying you should be honest with yourself with what it will cost you. Is it consuming you, or is your anger turning into action and now you're going to be a better advocate? I've seen anger go both ways, so just be honest about what it's costing you. Expectation management. It's important to manage your expectations, especially on the job hunt. I typically say disappointment comes when expectations don't align with reality. That has absolutely happened to me on the job hunt. I have, in my opinion, completely killed an interview, and I've even had a interviewer say, "Oh my God, we've learned so much from you." And so in my mind, I'm thinking I definitely got the job, and I didn't. So that was pretty sad, but I had to say, again, I had to remind myself that, they have a choice to make, and there's another person. While they did learn something from me, they could have learned something more from somebody else. So, and the fix isn't necessarily to trust less. It's to expect less, but observe more. Just because I killed that interview doesn't mean that there wasn't other people who were qualified, right? And I also say, even with that interview, or even with other things, I try to let experiences and moments teach me. So let the experience and moments teach us and not torment us, right? Because reliving and rehashing doesn't do anything but make us feel worse. So when you're reliving and you're rehashing, the question is, what can I learn and what can I gain from this? How can I take from this experience and apply it so I can be better or do something different? Because we always have to do something different. Thinking dialectically, this just means that you can look through new lenses and see two truths. So, for example, life isn't fair, right? Life isn't fair. And I can work to make it more equitable for others. So it's an and type thinking. And that goes under reframing your thoughts. And what I've tried to do, and this is also what I've learned this from DBT, which is dialectic behavior therapy, and I had to go through it because the hospital forced my child to go through it, so they gave parents classes. But it's try to separate anxious thoughts from reality. So instead of saying, I'll never get a job, I start labeling the thought. I'm having a thought that I'll never get a job. So it's taking away from, it's shifting the reality. The reality is not, I'll never get a job. The reality is that I'm having a thought. I'm having a fear that I'll never get a job. So it's kind of different. Rebuilding structure, I try to keep a routine. This is why I volunteer so much for NAMI. You will see me all over the space in NAMI because I'm trying to keep a routine. I'm trying to stay busy as I'm looking for a job. I still get up early because I don't want to lose that. Discovering meaning in life. So I used to ask myself, what does a life worth living look like to me? Keeping focus on my assets and strengths. So instead of me just rehashing about how I'm failing some of these interviews, I say, this is what I do well. I volunteer well. I show up. I do support groups really well. I still have strengths and assets, and I'm trying to shift my focus and shift my thoughts on that. I also I try to do something called emotional boxing. I was actually in therapy about 10 years ago for a traumatic event, and this is what my therapist told me. So it's setting a timer for when sadness, rage, anxiety, shame, they all barge in. They don't come in quietly, and they make themselves home. And if you let them, they could stay for hours, days, or even years. So by setting a timer and retheming your thoughts, you're giving your emotions space to breathe, but they're not like hijacking your entire day. So for 15-30, now when I started doing emotional boxing, I had to set it for an hour. So I would just cry for an hour and feel sorry for myself. But I soon got it down to like 30 and 15 minutes, but I cried. I did rage. I wrote in my journal, and I just let the sorrow come through without judgment. And then I said, okay, now it's time to reshift the focus and focus on something else. Also breaking bigger problems into smaller steps. It makes it less daunting and more manageable. I really have had to do this, especially when I was, filing for unemployment and, trying to do a job and get more hours with my part-time job. I had to just break that all down into smaller steps, and it makes it more easier and manageable. Taking small but calculated risks. So for example, I'm applying, I said, okay, now I found my passion. Now I found something else. I'm going to apply for these other jobs. Yes, they're making a lot less money, but it's calculated because I feel like as though my mental health would do better, right? So these are calculated risks that we should be taking. All right, next slide. So as I come to my conclusion, hopefully you found some of these coping strategies helpful, and I'm going to leave you with some resources for NAMI. They are wonderful. When my child was going through so much crisis, I had to reach out to NAMI. They have free support family support groups. If you're living with a mental illness, it helps us keep on task on our road to recovery, especially during the holidays, because during the holidays, stress without a job, the pressure is really there. So I would really encourage you all to reach out and connect. We have family support groups. We have the connection. We have different classes. They're all right here. Next slide. Here's the link to NAMI support groups. I run a support group. I run a support group in Catonsville, Maryland. I also run a support group in Anne Arundel. That one is for if you have children 18 and under who have a mental illness. So that's the specific one in Anne Arundel County. That's for youth. Next slide. So here are the upcoming webinars for NAMI Maryland. Making sense of the season. I'm actually doing this one. I'm going to be on a panel for NAMI Baltimore, and we're going to talk about mental health amidst federal cuts. The federal agency that I was with was actually SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, and they actually did get a few number of cuts. So we're going to talk about that. Holidays and grief, because there's a lot of grief over the holidays, whether we lost someone or whether we lost a job. There's grief. So that is hosted by NAMI Maryland on December 18th. And I also did a webinar last week on a radio station that was recorded, and that's here. It's called Sobriety During the Holidays, because again, the holidays are stressful and it's hard to stay in recovery when you've had a past struggle and if you're seeking a job. So these are just some of the resources that we wanted to highlight. Is there a next slide? That might be it. Oh, yep. And if you want to know how we can help each other, please visit NAMIMaryland.org. Again, so helpful, so very helpful. They have a hotline, a helpline that you can call if you need a therapist, you need a psychiatrist, if your loved one is in jail, you need is looking at time, you need a lawyer, you need housing. If you call NAMI Maryland, they have a lot of those resources in the helpline. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Hopefully this was helpful.
So inspiring, Joy. Thank you so much for joining us today. My favorite part is watching the emojis fly after your presentations. I do see a couple questions, which I'm thinking of for you. Do you want to take a couple questions and then we can talk about healthcare for job seekers?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. For those of you who had questions, would you like to add them in chat, or do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, you can raise your hand and come off mute, and we can keep it brief. Or if you want to put it in the chat, and then Joy can respond in the chat. Either one.
Okay, let me look in the chat.
You got a lot of thank yous.
Yeah, I see a lot of thank yous. How can you join NAMI? So this is Dr. Ahmed. I'm a mother, yes, autism. And I actually do a support group with a lot of people, a good number of people in my support group that have children with autism. It depends on what county that you live in. So you can join, there's a NAMI Anne Arundel County, PG County, Baltimore County, and so the Baltimore Metro covers Carroll County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. And if you don't, and then there's a Montgomery County and the Howard County. If you don't live in one of those major counties, then joining NAMI Maryland. NAMI Maryland covers all the rest. So you can Google NAMI, or actually if you go to NAMIMarylandRightHere.org, it'll have the link to all the counties. So I would suggest that you join NAMI depending on which county you're in. All right, I think that was the only question. I appreciate.
I have one if that's okay. I mean, since there's no one wanted to come off mute.
Sure.
I appreciate it. I'm sitting in my car. I appreciate you sharing and being open to your struggles and how, and I mean, I resonated with it. I'm currently actually looking for trying to seek legal counsel for what I went through. And I have a child on the spectrum as well. So of course, I've always needed something flexible, but and I appreciate what you were saying about how to set your mind, like I'm not gonna get a job. Yes, I've applied to all these jobs and I was, right there, and they're like, oh, sorry, yeah, you did good in the interview, but there was someone who had more what we need. And that is it's frustrating.
Frustrating, heartbreaking.
And I agree with the anxiety and sometimes I don't want to, like I'm applying for these jobs and then I'm like sleeping and I'm like, and I know what it is. I'm aware of what it is. And you still got to take care of your babies, right?
Yep.
And my baby's almost 13, but my baby. So you still have to go through life, and I appreciate you sharing your information. I would love to help others as well go through, even with advocacy with their children. I'm actually waiting on a meeting in like 15 minutes to talk to the school. But while I too am trying to